The African National Congress has declared this a week of mourning following the death and subsequent burial of Deputy Secretary General Jessie Duarte. We've heard different people tell us how they remember the cultural and political activist who also served as ambassador to Mozambique. Ayanda Dlodlo is a politician, a former cabinet minister, and now alternative executive director based in Washington, D.C. for the World Bank. She joins us now. A very good day to you, Ms. Dlodlo, and thanks for making the time to speak to us in spite of the time differences.
Good day to you. Well, it's very early morning this side. Thank you for inviting me.
How did you hear about the passing of Ms. Duarte, and how was that for you?
It was very sad, very painful, because I woke up to that news. I switched on my phone. Well, I never switch off my phone, but I went on to WhatsApp as usual every morning. And that's the message that I found on my phone, that Mrs. Jessie had passed away.
The movement really affected by this on this side. Just in terms of your thoughts about her work, how have you worked with her?
She was more like a big sister to me, more than she was just a comrade, and also to a very large extent, a friend. I worked with her extremely well. She always had my back. I knew that when I had to be defended some way, or I had to be spoken for some way, she would be the torchbearer. Never disappointing, she always was. And I think she was the same for a lot more people other than just me. She was very dependable. She was very reliable. She carried her leadership, sisterhood, and friendship role with so much pizzazz. She was really a very good person. I mean, she would tell you off when you had to hear it from her. It never came in small doses. She would put it out there to you in a way that you would know never to do that again, or you would understand what her views and feelings are about a particular matter that would have irked her at that particular time. So she was not shy to speak her mind. She was also truthful and honestly, and she had integrity. So that was the type of leader that we had to work with. And I must say, as the CEO, basically, of the ANC for the longest of time, even if she was the Deputy Secretary General, she really almost always took up the role of being the CEO of the African National Congress. And she held that position with integrity. She was very diligent, extremely industrious in her work.
You're talking about her endeavors to develop a sisterhood. How telling then that at her passing, she was the only senior woman leader in the African National Congress at the very top level?
Believe me, Desiree, that was her peeve subject of the African National Congress. That and the issue sexism or patriarchy, and the issue of adherence to our own policy or value stance on the national question. She always called it out whenever she had an opportunity to do that. She never minced her words about the fact that she was the only woman, and about the fact also that seemingly ANC women are only good enough to be deputy secretaries general, when she had performed way beyond expectation in that particular role. So she never minced her words about the issue of race, the issue of gender within the African National Congress. She was public about it, but also spoke in the corridors of the African National Congress about the vagaries of patriarchy and also non-racialism, as it were.
Who will then step in as a woman leader, pick up the baton and take up from where she left off as the organization approaches that December conference?
I think the ANC needs to dig deep within its archives because these women are there. There are many women, Desiree, in this African National Congress that could take up the most senior of positions within the ANC. The ANC is awash with talent, and some of that talent exists outside the NEC because I think that is our greatest problem. When we talk about succession in the ANC, we look within what we see currently, which is either a BEC, a PEC, or a National Executive Committee, which is really wrong because you then leave out a huge chunk of people who are probably much more talented than some of us who sit in that National Executive Committee. So the pool of talent in the ANC is endless. So we should start digging deep into that. And those women are there. It's not as if even within the NEC, there aren't any of those women. The talent pool is huge. We just need to draw from it.
How should we remember her?
As a fierce fighter and advocate for justice, always, whether it was on the national question, whether it was on sexism, whether it was on racism, whether it was on how unfair deployees of the African National Congress were treated sometimes. She would always step up. She was almost the advocate and the defender and supporter of the underdog. I remember many a nights, an afternoon, a morning with her at her home, sitting by the fireplace, talking about issues that affected the ANC, affected me personally, affected her personally. We would either be sitting at the fireplace if it was winter on the fireside, or we would be sitting out in her beautiful garden if it was a spring or summer. So we had those moments. I would go to her house from time to time. She would pick up the call me, come, let's talk. And we would just sit for hours on end and have these conversations about the state of the ANC, about me and my work within government. And she was always there to lend a helping hand. And that was, I've not only worked with her at the level of the African National Congress, I worked with her even in government. We were both at the presidency at some point. I was the parliamentary counselor to the president, and she was the chief operating officer in the presidency. A marvelous, industrious, and competent administrator in the presidency. So I know her work from the side of the African National Congress, but also from the side of government. I have worked with her on many fronts. When Nomvula took over as Minister, Nomvula Mokonyane took over as MEC for Safety and Security in Gauteng, I was her head of department. And the work that we did was based on the groundwork that she had put in place over many years. That Safety and Security Department became a department under informed by Section 206 of the Constitution. It became a department that worked for the people of Gauteng, and all of that was based on her work.
So when you say the African National Congress has a pool of women, the conversation right now in the country is the race for leadership in KwaZulu-Natal as they go to their elective conference on Friday. And one of the contestants is Nomusa Dube Ncube, competing with two other men. And just, we wonder if she'll even make it to the finish line in this patriarchal environment. What will it take for this pool of women to come up in the ANC? And
Desiree, you've just mentioned one of the most talented women in the African National Congress. Acquitted herself extremely well as an MEC over many years, as a leader in her own right within the African National Congress for many years. In every position that she has held, Nomusa Dube has really acquitted herself very well. And now we are talking about just one such woman. Imagine how many more Nomusas are replicated within the African National Congress, both old and young. So you have actually put forth what I have said before, that there's a dearth of talent within the African National Congress.
Thank you so much for making the time. You did say you had to wake up very early, but just one final question to you. How's Washington? With hindsight, are you happy that you resigned from your cabinet position for this endeavor?
It's a very interesting job, and you have to work almost twice as hard, a lot of reading. But I must say it was a beautiful opportunity for me to be part and parcel of an organization that is in constant transformation. There's a lot of reading, there's a lot of access to information. We are a knowledge-based organization. So you can imagine what it is that one is exposed to in the corridors of the World Bank Group, because it is really quite a huge organization. I am enjoying my work here. I do still represent the hopes and aspirations of our people, and I will always do that in any position that I occupy.
Thanks again for your time. We don't know if you're starting the day or hitting the snooze button again, but Ms. Ayanda Dlodlo is the Alternative Executive Director at the World Bank, speaking to us about her work with the late